Howdy. Thanks for joining another Butler book chat. In this episode, I want to talk about those books where we're more drawn to the secondary characters. That certainly happened to me once or twice. Has it happened to you? I wonder why this happens when this occurs. And maybe I'll come to a pass myself when this happens with one of my own stories. Trinity, the meddling mother in Caught Out, is much more interesting than my two main characters, for example. I doubt it, but maybe my readers will think differently. Anyway, as I said, there have been times when, for example, the snarky or quirky best friend is more interesting to me than the main characters. Sometimes the author is being clever and is setting the secondary character up for their own story, like John in Unbound by J.R. Ward. Not that I wasn't interested in V and Jane's story in Unbound, but I really, really wanted that book in the series to include John's coming of age and his transition. I was that invested in him in Unbound. I've mentioned in a previous podcast how much I hate cliffhangers. And not getting John's whole story in this installment was like a cliffhanger for me. Even though this book wasn't really about him, it was V's and Jane's story. Another case in point is Kevin's mother in Susan Elizabeth Phillips' This Heart of Mine. Kevin and his mother are estranged, and she turns up at these holiday cottages which he's inherited and he's in the process of doing up. The author describes Kevin's mother as a faded beauty, but the dialogue she's given and the interest from a famous artist was a side to the story that for me was almost as strong as the main story itself. I certainly like Kevin's mother more than I did Kevin or Molly, the two main characters. Final example. This is from Revelations of His Runaway Bride by Callie Anthony. This story is a little different in that I liked all the characters and the arranged marriage trope is right up my street. But I loved the introduction of the love between Sergei and Anna. I especially love how it was revealed, a great bit of drama, and I like how it shifted the power. No, spoilers. Sergei and Anna are secondary characters in the story, but I wish we'd found out what was the obstacle to them coming clean and being open about the fact that they were together. It piqued my interest. Maybe Callie Anthony will give them their own story at some point. Anyway, what about you? You too must have read stories where you were just as or more invested in the main characters. In the secondary characters as you were in the main characters. And maybe even more invested in the antagonist. Controversial. If you have found yourself reading a book and feeling this way, which books were they? Which stories were they? Leave me a comment with links if possible. Unbound by J.R. Ward was published in 2007. This Heart of Mine by Susan Elizabeth Phillips was published in 2001. Revelations of His Runaway Bride by Kelly Anthony was published in 2020. Thanks for listening.